So I am thrilled to have Paula Gregory here with us. Hello, Miss Paula. So I met Paula when I was a fellow still. It was after I did my postdoc when I was a medical fellow. And I remember Paula and I were talking just about life and things, and she used the term, she's like, I could fit you with a grant. And I remember thinking, you're going to fit me with a grant? What an interesting conversation. And since then, I have had her come every year because I'm hoping you guys will see that she has this uncanny ability to think about NIH, think about how we as clinical researchers, people in rare disease, think about what kind of grant might be right for you. And she has some really nice insights on federal grants. So Paula, as always, love having you here with us. She recently moved, so now she's the Associate Dean for Faculty and Educational Development at UNTHSC, Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences in Texas. Okay, take it away, Paula, and I'm going to shush now. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very excited. Every time Deb asks me to do this lecture, I'm like, I will rearrange my schedule because I love doing it. Now I'm gonna, in full disclosure, I made some new slides today, so who knows what'll happen with that. So one of the most important things that you need to remember when you're writing a grant is if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it well enough. And this is particularly true when you're writing a grant because you can't assume that everybody, it's not like a journal article where they send it to somebody who's also an expert in the field. This is something where people kind of know some of what you do. They probably don't know all of what you do. So you want to make sure from the beginning that you explain things start with the big picture. And explain things in a way that any educated person could understand. I don't know the right term. So today we're going to talk about the K Awards, the NIH K Awards. And the K Awards are career development awards. Some of the foundations have career development awards as well. I know the American Heart Association does, ASH does, the Hematology Society. So there are foundation grants that are career development as well. But I thought we would start with this because most of the foundation grants will ask you to put your grant in the same format that you would if you were doing NIH. So what's unique about the K Awards? The candidate, you and your career plan are at least a third of what's scored. So the whole old-fashioned idea of the research is important and it needs to be reasonable, but what you want to learn and your mentors are scored and are extremely important. So I took this long text, which you can look at later, from the NIH, but basically the idea of the K Awards was to have a funding mechanism that would facilitate the transition from resident fellow to independent faculty member. And the grants that we're going to talk about the most are the K08 and the K23, which are just for clinical faculty. And you have to be faculty because I think most of you are faculty. But if you're a fellow, I have another one for you that I can fit you with. So there are 14 different types of K Awards, and I call myself the K expert, but sometimes even I get stumped. They are all mentored. You have to have training. You have to have a mentor. Some are more independent, the K02, K22, and R00, and the mid-career. And this is something for someone like that you work with might think about doing a K24. The K24 is particularly helpful for clinical faculty who mentor junior faculty. This will actually give them protected time to be mentoring clinicians. The K Awards support both clinicians and basic scientists, but we're not really going to talk about the basic science Ks because most of you are clinicians. And it's, as I said, spans everything from being a senior postdoc resident to junior faculty. And I can't say it enough times, every NIH institute uses the K a little differently. So for even for the same K, but one institute may have slightly different rules than another one. So you want to keep that in mind because you're going to have to talk to the people at that institute about how they interpret these rules, etc.
Paula, I just want to make the comment that you already said that one most important take-home message: talk to the people at the institute. If that's all anyone takes away today, we have accomplished our goal. But continue, Paula. I'll quit talking now.
I love it. Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Nothing else. Because if you talk to them and they feel that the K that you're interested in isn't right, they'll tell you the K that is. So the two that I said we were talking about, the K08. K08 is basically for clinical folks who want to do lab research, primarily. I mean, that's kind of the shorthand term for it. K23 is patient-oriented research. Now, if you think about it, most of you could go either way. You're going to be studying patient samples, et cetera, but maybe analyzing it in the lab or something. So we're going to talk about strategies to figure out maybe which of the Ks would be better for you. Timeline. I always have to talk about this. It's same as what Deb said about, talk to the people. Give yourself enough time. You are busy clinical faculty. Y'all, right now I have 3 pulmonary critical care faculty who I'm trying to help them with their Ks. And they were slammed and are still slammed with COVID. And yet they want to write grants about COVID. So it's been, this timeline not quite so good for them. But give yourself 4 to 6 months to complete this thing. And it's not just the writing of the actual research. It's things like you've got to get letters from people. You need to get things, budgets and things done, etc. And so those things take a lot more time than you think they will. And of course, something always goes wrong at the last minute. So give yourself time so you're not stressed out, because these are stressful enough times right now. So as I said, 4 to 6 months before you even want to apply, work through this strategy that I'm going to try to give you to come up with the best mechanism, which K and which institute to apply to. Print and read the instructions. That should be obvious, but you would be surprised how many people do not read the instructions. And then they go to hand in the grant, and the grant people say, oh no, you can't do this. So make sure you read through the instructions. Talk to your grants office what their deadlines are. So almost every university I've been at has a deadline that they have to look at your budget and stuff before they actually send in the grant. And that's usually 5 to 7 days before the grant is due. And it's usually printed very clearly on their webpage, but you can call and talk to them. What do they need? When do they need it? So let's talk about strategy, because I think that's one place that people really fall down. They don't really know how to gather any information, and they just assume, well, my mentor has a grant from this institute, I should apply to the same one. And that may or may not be true. So everything you need to know about NIH is at nih.gov. That's pretty easy to remember. And it takes you to this webpage. This is from today, which obviously COVID is all they're talking about. But information you need about health, grants, news, last week it was about the people who were NIH funded, who won Nobel Prizes, research and training, etc. If you pull down this grants and funding tab, most of the things you need are going to be there. There's a home page. We're going to talk about find funding, which is called the guide, the due dates. So the K Awards have the same due dates as our same due months. So October, February, and June, but they are on the 12th. So that's another thing that you want to clarify with your grants office, is that you're sending in something that has a different deadline. You're not going to go in when they have this huge rush of R01s. I don't know if I'd read this how to apply thing. Policies, contracts, loan repayment. You guys, I didn't put this in here, but if any of you are doing pediatric research and have any funding supporting you, you can get up to 25% of your med school loans repaid by the government. And it is, the applications are due right now. But the good news is do them. They are, it's not hard. It's fairly uncomplicated, and not that many people apply to it. So you have a good chance of getting funded. And I meant to say that. I'm sorry, I forgot. Two things over here that we'll talk about. We're going to talk about the reporter, which is a database of grants. And the other thing is your university has to create you an ERA Commons account. The ERA Commons is just basically like a Dropbox for your, computer Dropbox. You're going to put your grant in through ERA Commons. NIH is going to send you back, your scores and all that stuff through ERA Commons. So everything that happens with your grant will happen through that. So this is the find funding button, also called the guide. They've made it much more user-friendly. I've made it a hyperlink here on these slides. You can search by a certain term. If you just open it up, it's going to be chronological. This is the stuff that just got added today, basically. But you can also look by activity code. So for us, it would be down in the Ks. And you can look by certain institutes. And again, you can use a search term. This works better than it used to, the search term stuff, but it's still a little like Google used to be when it first came out. Like, you get a lot of things that have, like, if you put DNA, you'll get everything that has a D, an N, or an A. So I think sometimes it's best to start with this. Now, these are just grant announcements. Some of them are RFA, which means a request for applications. And what you'll notice on this request for applications is it's a pretty short turnaround. Came out in November, they want you to send it by May. They're really looking for people already working in that area. But the beauty of those is, if you're working in that area, the only people you'll compete against are other people working in that area, instead of just kind of everybody who wants to get a grant. So RFAs are pretty good. It's just, whether you actually have data and are kind of ready to go. The other thing that should be on here is program announcements. So program announcements are usually several years. Like this one just came out, and it's good for several years. So if you pull up the program announcements for the Ks, I pulled up, there are several different K08s as well as the K23s, because some are for diversity, some are for with a clinical trial, without a clinical trial, no clinical trial, but using human samples, those kinds of things. So here's the program announcement, just the general program announcement: independent clinical trial not allowed. for the K-23. So this is patient-oriented research without a clinical trial. And no, you're thinking, what? Well, this could be outcomes research. This could be just all kinds of things. And you can see that almost all of the institutes participate in this. So that's the first thing, is kind of find your program announcement, look through it, make sure you understand. I'm sorry, let me go back. One thing they all will have is this link to specific requirements of each institute. So for example, NINDS might give you a higher salary cap, or they might give you more funding for research compared to somebody else, whatever. You're not going to pick your granting agency based on how much of your salary they're going to pay, but you need to make sure you understand if they have any special rules. And every one of these Ks is going to have this little link to a table. All right, the reporter is a database of all the funded NIH grants now and back to 1985. And we won't talk about why you would want to look at 1985, but you might. So it's searchable by mechanism, it's searchable by institute, it's searchable by topic, and you guys, it's also searchable by place and university. So let's say you now are interviewing for a job somewhere. You can pull up all the grants they have at that school, or you could pull up all the grants they have just in pediatrics department or something. It's a good resource for what topics, what types of research have already been funded. So I call it like a spy thing, because you can find out a lot about a school or about a topic looking at the grants. Here's a little thing maybe you haven't thought about. Use this before you send in your grant. Make sure, look up your topic, look up your mechanism, and make sure that your grant looks different from any other grant that might be on a similar topic. Make the title different, look at what you'll see on there is the title and an abstract. So make sure that it sounds different. And I'll tell you why. I'm a reviewer. And one of the things I'm going to do is pull up all the K awards. If you're applying for a K, is there already something funded to do this research? And if so, why are we going to fund you? So you need to make your grant look different to begin with. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. See, it's really just common sense. So the reporter this is what the reporter looks like. Again, you can look by the name of a person. It's a PI. Up here, you can pick the dates. It defaults to active, so it just shows you grants that are currently funded. Over here, you can pick different institutes and different funding well, they call it funding mechanism. Don't look at that. Activity code will be where it's like R01, R21, K, etc. So you want to look at that, and and this is a pull down for the institutes. You can always look by a topic. I usually say do that second. Look at how many, if you think you know what kind of K you want, look how many K-23s are funded by NIDDK, and kind of look at the flavor of them before you put your topic in. And then you might want to put your topic in to see who all has grants, not just Ks, any grants on your topic. And you say, but I know the literature, and I'm studying a very rare disease, and I know all of this. Yeah, you know all of this, except you don't know the people that have just got a grant. They're junior faculty. They haven't yet published the paper on that stuff. And so they're not hitting the radar. And I've actually seen people play around with reporter and come back to me and tell me they found collaborators based on the person's grant. This person has a mouse model and I have the human samples, and we're going to work together. So it's a very helpful database. I go to it all the time. And what you get, this is the kind of reports you get. So I just put myself in and pulled up my grants. And what you see over here is the mechanism. This is my secret grant number, which is not secret. This is the title. And if you click on it, it will take you to the abstract. And it will tell you when it was funded, like when it started, when it's going to end, how much and what the budget was. Now for K's, you don't care about the budget. Here's why. It's not like a R01 where you can ask for $5 million. There's a set amount of money you can ask for. So most of the K's, if you pull them up, you'll see that the budgets are pretty similar. So
Paula, can I say one more thing? Will you go back one slide for me?
Sure.
I just want everyone to notice that Paula uses multiple funding ICs. So she doesn't always just go to one institute. No. You do not have to commit to one institute for a lifetime, unlike your likely mentors. Please don't. Please feel free to leave an institute and go to another one if they have better funding. Can I say that out loud, Paula?
I think that's great. And
okay, I'm going to shush now again. Okay.
Well, I think the other thing is when you go to Reporter and you put your topic in, you may be surprised how many different institutes fund that specific thing. So you might think of Alzheimer's as mostly being National Institute of Aging, but it's also NINDS, it's also NRGMS. You will be surprised at some of what comes up, and that's why the Reporter is very helpful. So this was where I just pulled up some K23s. I forget what they were. I just pulled up some K23s. These are not all the K23s, obviously. So here you see this is the mechanism. This is the institute. They have a 2-letter abbreviation for the institute, but you can also see which institute it is over here. Okay. Okay, so now you've got some ideas. I think it could be a K08 or a K23, but definitely from the National Cancer Institute. Okay, great. One way that we might make a decision would be to look at the funding success rates. So that's a whole nother table. So I usually tell people look at the last 4 or 5 years. It goes all the way back to 2010, but the budget, the economy, the pandemic, things have changed since 2010, in case you don't remember. So, try to look at more recent things. Excuse me. Compare the success rates for different funding mechanisms. Or you can compare the success rate for the same mechanism, like a K08, from 2 different institutes or 3 different institutes, whatever. And then be sure to check if there's anything unique about that one institute. So here's what the success rates table page looks like. How do you get there? NIH.gov. And then in the search engine, I put success tables. And it comes right up every time. Now, we don't really care about the R01s because we're not applying for R01s yet. So at the bottom of the page is actually the Training and Career Development Awards. And this is the most happy Excel spreadsheet I've ever met. You can just go up and you click on this thing and you pick what you want. You don't have to do this hide and formula and whatever. I don't understand. Nope. Just picked it. So I picked 2015 to 2019. That's all they have. They'll be finishing up 2020 pretty soon. Thank God. And then I picked K08s and K23s. And I left all the institutes here so that you could compare some of these different institutes that maybe you never thought about, like the Eye Institute or the Environmental Health Institute, and look at their funding rates. So here's the percent success rate. Now, 100% sounds really great until you look over here and see it was just They only have one grant. Now, don't think that just because there was one grant that came in, they had to fund it. Because down here, they had only two and they didn't fund but half of them. But I do think that what you can see is if, let's say you were working on drug abuse and mental health, you might decide that, looking at the 22% versus 62%, you might decide to kind of emphasize the mental health part of your project. Does that make sense? Stay awake. Yeah, I know. Zooms. Oh my goodness. So that was the K08s. This is the K23s from 2019. And again, you get percent success rates. And look, I don't even know why these people are in here. 0. They didn't even fund anybody. They should be like, that should be something not allowed. But you, again, just because an institute is kind of small. Now, NIGMS is kind of general medical sciences. It's a little bit of everything. They have people studying tunneling microscopes and, radiation and all kind of crazy stuff. On the other hand, NIDCR, dental and craniofacial, they had 100% success rate. Ooh, for those lucky 3 people. So look at the success rates. I had someone who was, she was a clinical oncologist and she was applying for her K and she couldn't decide between the K23 and the K08. We looked at the success rate tables. We looked at all kinds of things and they were coming up dead even. And guess what she did? She called the program officer and she said, I'm getting human samples, but I'm studying them in the lab. I could go either way. I'm not really sure. And he said, K23, under applied for. So he had a better sense even than what we could find in these tables. So always make sure you talk to him. Here's the thing. Don't cold call them. Send them your specific aims and your Biosketch by email and ask them for an appointment to talk on the phone. They are federal employees and anything they put in writing is a legal document. But when you're talking to somebody and they say, well, you could do that, that pretty much tells you what they think. So having a phone conversation, but giving them something to read before they talk to you, I think is the best way to handle that. Most of the program people who are in charge of training grants, and this is considered a training type grant, are picked for their personality, meaning they actually have one versus most of the other program officers. So they do actually try to help people. They try to be nice. Some institutes are much more committed to training than others. I know Genome is very committed to training. NIDDK, they score every K, no matter what your score is. No one gets triaged. So everybody gets all the comments from the study section.
So Paula, just to reiterate, send your specific aims page, send your Biosketch, ask for an appointment, and then they can give you that little innuendo like, have you thought about this type of award? And then you should do that award. Is that fair, Paula?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you should have a conversation with a human at NIH, even though they're really scary, but they're not.
Scary. They shop at
People like us. They're people like you and me, right, Paula?
Come on. How scary could they be?
They're like us. Exactly.
Like us. Okay. So another resource that you may not know about is there are actual sample grants, full funded, real grants, not made up grants, not sort of grants, not grants from 1,000 years ago. These are through the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. The NCI has some sample grants as well, but they're mostly population study grants. So if you do, I didn't think anybody studying rare diseases did a lot of population epidemiology. Maybe you do. Either way, NIH.gov sample grants. So the sample applications, they have R01s. If you want to see what an R01 looks like, they have those. The one thing that's in there, they've redacted people's salaries, people's personal information and stuff. But the entire grant's there and the study section comments. Cool. Or bad or not. And they have 2 KO8s. So you can see a full KO8 and how somebody put something together. Now you say, well, I don't study infectious disease. It doesn't matter. A grant is a grant is a grant. So looking at the way that this person put their candidate section together and this person put their candidate section together is just as important no matter what they're studying. And you can see, what did the reviewers say? And you can see what their score was, which is, these people are brave. I mean, even if I had a good score, I'm not sure I want it out on the internet. So once you've looked at all of those things, now you're ready to kind of start thinking about your K award. What's unique about the K? The career development section. It's 6 pages is your max. That includes a page. We usually try to do 1 page. And your candidate background, we'll talk more about that. A page, less than a page, like a quarter of a page of your goals. And then the rest of it is your training plan. Ks do not require innovation section. Most people put something in, but it's not scored, it's not required. Your mentors and your environment are scored. So get some good mentors. And if you don't have a good mentor, get an extra one. That's the other thing. You don't have to have just one mentor. Most people are going to have a mentoring team. So the career development plan, again, is this candidate thing, your goals, your training plan, letters from the mentors, Biosketch, and your Biosketch. And so all of this kind of rolls into, yes, there's a candidate score and a mentor score, but the overall impression that people will have will be kind of all of these things together. You and your mentor are the most important part of the application. Sell yourself. Don't just reiterate your Biosketch. I went to school here and I had this and I published a paper and I went to school there and blah, blah, blah. Now tell me something interesting. How did you get interested in rare diseases? Why would you be doing a fellowship in whatever you're doing it in? How did you end up where you are? Something that gives me a sense of who you are more than just your Biosketch. Now, yeah, it's important to put in there your papers and stuff, but this is a way to give the reviewers a more realistic idea about you. It's also, there's little tricks that you can do in this section. So if you have something that might be viewed as a weakness or questionable in your Biosketch, I had someone, she had 2 years, just nothing. So in her candidate section, she wrote, for 2 years, I stayed home with my children. I learned many managerial skills. That answered the question of where she was those 2 years, which the reviewers are going to ask, where was she? There's nothing in here. The other thing you can do in the candidate section is you can mention papers that are in review. You cannot put them in your Biosketch. It's not allowed. You have to have published papers in your Biosketch. But if you have a paper that just went in for review that's really pertinent, this is where you can send. These experiments led us to this paper in review. So it's a great place to kind of, again, give the reviewers a sense of who you are. I had one applicant, his first sentence was about how he's interested in genetics and genomics and how it's important in human disease. And yeah, okay, whatever. It was good, but it was kind of, generic. And the second sentence, he said, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. Now, this guy's now a postdoc, when he's writing this, he's a postdoc at NIH. So clearly he is somebody who's hardworking, he's smart, etc. Without saying, I'm hardworking and smart. So in the background, you want to describe your training that enables you to engage in the research and any prior experiences. Describe evidence of productivity, papers and abstracts. Describe any formal research training. Some people have gotten a MPH, etc., things that might add to. But you also want to be careful and not to look overqualified. The K is to help you learn a few more skills so you can move to the next level. If you come across as, I have thousands of papers, I'm a genius, you don't need a K. That's what the study section will say. You are really good. You don't need a K. Go write an R. So you want to sound good, but maybe just not perfect. And I think the most important thing you can do is say, these are the skills I have right now. This award is going to help me gain some more skills. So that's where you get into the goals and objectives. So the goal of the K is to help you do this transition to independence. The goals and objectives, I think this one I really like. It's just really short. My long-term goal is X. And then to that, I've identified the following specific things. I want to learn this, and I want to do this other thing. Maybe 3 or 4 things, and just state them as statements, just like you would on a specific aims page. So be sure to emphasize how, again, your previous training is going to build on that. Make it clear that it's critical to, this research is critical and training is critical to your transition. And state the goals succinctly. I think I misspelled that. And then restate them in the training plan. And describe how you'll accomplish the goals. So I'm telling you all these stories because I teach about 40 people a year to write K awards. And we had someone send in a K, and she had 36 papers as a postdoc. And she told us that in her Biosketch, in her specific, everywhere. It might as well have been a flashing sign. Because she wanted them to see that she was very productive. The problem was, they said, you have 36 papers. You don't need a K. You are clearly very good. Just write an R. So, and she was like, well, and I was like, there was nothing wrong with having 36 papers. What was the problem was pounding it in their heads so much. They really started not to believe that you needed this award. So look good, but just not too good. All right, the career development activities during the award. What about your mentor's mentoring committee? It's important to demonstrate that one of the mentors has a track record of training people. I saw a K award application that came in. I reviewed it. And the primary mentor was a physician, and the person was a physician. And so in her letter, she actually made a table of the physicians she had trained and where they are now doing research. And it wasn't a huge table, but I think the point was many people would have wondered whether a busy physician who mentors and does some research really has trained very many people, has a track record. Now, that said, if your mentor, let's say you started working with somebody and they haven't trained a lot of people, add in a mentor who has. That's all. Just add another one in. Outside mentors or, somebody from another institution are allowed, and they may actually make it a lot better. But make sure that you clearly define what each of the mentors what role they're going to play in your grant. Specific mentoring activities included in the letters. When are you going to meet? This is a new thing that they're asking. It's coming up over and over again in review. How frequently are you going to meet? What are your expectations for publications, abstracts? And define how the committee will measure your progress. That is a specific thing that the reviewers are asked to rate. So tell them, if you answer the questions that I'm supposed to look for me, oh, I'm so much happier with your grant. I like it a lot better. The mentor letters. So you get 6 pages. There's a limit of 6 pages. Most people should plan on at least 2 pages for their primary mentor. What that mentor needs to say is who he is, what his scientific expertise is, what role he's going to play in your training, and kind of where, if it's your primary mentor, what part of this project are you going to get to take as your own? So this person actually made a table, who is the person, here's my mentor. And I like that the person actually put the degree instead of just calling him Dr. Huff or Dr. whoever, because then, especially if you have MDs and PhDs, it's easy for us. If you make me go look at their Biosketch to see what kind of degree they have, it's where they work, I'm just mad. I'm like, come on, I'm lazy. I have 5,000 other things to do. Make this easy for me. So you can see here she had what their funding was and what their position was. This was from another one. This is from one of the sample grants, and it goes 2 pages. So she had, here is the name of the primary mentor. This is where the person works, and this is the primary mentor. She identifies that he has mentored this many people. This is what his expertise is. For this project, we will meet. She tells when they're going to meet. This is the other person who's in here. He's in biostats, blah, 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 blah. He's a co-mentor. Okay. Now, what's the difference between a mentor and a consultant or a collaborator? A consultant is somebody, let's say you're going to run some samples in a fax, fax sort some cells. That's a consultant. They'll write a letter saying, I'm happy to run these samples. This sounds like a great project. But they're not training you how to run a fax machine or to sort cells. So they're not a mentor. Collaborator is somebody giving you something. Now, if the collaborator is going to also teach you how to use the thing they're giving you, then they're a mentor. All right, your career development activities. The thing I hate the most is to read somebody saying, I'm going to take some courses. Well, what courses? What's the name of the course? When are you going to take it? So be specific. Tell me the course name and number and maybe a 1-sentence description of the course. And also include a description of informal or tutorials. Sometimes if you're just going to go to somebody's lab and learn a technique, you don't, it's not a course, but put it in the plan. Okay. Conferences and seminars. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had conferences and seminars now? I know. Are you going to attend? Are you going to present data? National presentation goals. And then this is another one that gets for the reviewers asking, when are you meeting with these people? If you have somebody, let's say you're in Bethesda and you have a mentor who's in California, yes, you can Zoom, but you might also say, and we're going to meet once a year at the so-and-so meeting. that we always go to. If we ever get to go to meetings and meet with people in person. So this is an example of one, the education and training activities. So she has her classes listed, how many credits. I don't know that that's important, but when is it offered? And kind of just a 1-sentence description of the class. That doesn't take up that much room. And again, they don't all have to be classes that are taught at a university. Here's one at Jackson Labs. I know that some of the institutes, like National Institute of Aging, actually has a 5-day boot camp on aging research. Put it in there. Again, y'all, this is a plan. If you don't get the money, you may not do all these things. But in an ideal world, I want to take these courses. I want to get better at such and such. Put a timeline. Please put a timeline. Put a timeline. Put a timeline. What I like about this timeline.
So, Paula, are you saying they should do a timeline?
I think a timeline would be good.
Oh, a timeline. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So you want a timeline, though, that brings together your scientific goals and your other goals, like manuscripts that are going to be submitted, when you're going to look for a job, or you already have a job, lab meetings, are you mentoring students maybe, or training people, courses, what progress evaluation you got, etc. What's nice about it's not very big. I mean, I had to make it big so you could read it, but it's really like less than a quarter of the page. And it brings together the plan for training, but also the plan for research in one picture. Ooh, bless you. This one I don't like quite as much. I put it in here because why not? This is a timeline proposed for a K-23. Like this 60.5%. Yeah, I don't. It's okay. You know, I don't know that you're punching a clock, how much percent. But again, you know, conferences, manuscripts, the main parts are here. I like the color one a little better just because to me, it's easier to see different colors than just brown boxes. You need to help your mentor write his or her personal statement in their Biosketch, because they have one already written about their expertise, but it says nothing about you or about your project. The purpose of the personal statement is, how does this person fit into this project? And the personal statement should say the same thing as the mentor letter said. It should say, this is my expertise. I'm committed to training. I've trained a bunch of people. And this is where I'm working with Sally on her project. Right there. I have a strong commitment to mentoring scientists. I love it. Okay. One thing I haven't mentioned about the Ks that is kind of unique, they do have a time limit on eligibility. So you can't be 85 years old and apply for a K. Even if you just became a doctor and you just started research, there is a time limit. So I want you to think about applying early, even if your research may not be totally done, because then you still have eligible time to resubmit. You know, plan to put it together, hope for the best. But if you get a score, that's the best start. If you're not funded, just fix it and send it back. Edit, 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 and edit. When you're not talking to the program person, be editing. Get somebody who's not an expert on your field to look it over. Make sure your mentor looks it over. The problem with the mentor reading it is they'll read it for the science, but they know the science. So you need somebody who doesn't quite know the science to look over it, because again, the case study section is not going to be all expert on your one little topic. And look at this, 9 minutes to go to answer questions. So questions, and you can post them in the chat. Deb's going to help me with that.